Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women with Vision May meeting. We're so excited to have you, excited to have our speaker, Nancy Allen. And I think it's so fitting with everything going on to be talking about successfully navigating your way through no longer this, but no longer that. With the way things are changing daily, I think it's very fitting that she pivoted for us her discussion today to be so relevant to what we're all facing today. And I think it's going to be, to our mission where we are always wanting to educate, collaborate, and just empower each other through these situations. So I think it's going to be such an awesome event, and we're so excited to have you. We're going to go ahead, just explain how we're going to do it today since we're doing a webinar and we're usually face-to-face at a lunch. I hope you all are snacking on something really good, and I can't wait till we're all together again. But today how we're going to do it is we're just going to go right into the presentation. Nancy's going to present for us for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. On the side, or you can go into your chat or to your Q&A and type in a question, and they'll get those questions to Nancy after her presentation, and she'll have time to answer those. We're going to be mindful of your time and make sure to wrap it up in a timely manner. And if there's any questions that weren't answered, we'll make sure to get those answers out to you. I believe these slides will also be available to you, and we'll be getting this all out to you. This will be recorded, so if you don't catch something or want to watch it again later or share it with somebody you think it would be relevant to, that's going to be available to you. So that's how we're going to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about our amazing speaker. Nancy Allen is an international speaker, coach, consultant, author, and an expert on women's business issues. For more than 30 years, she has been helping small business owners at all stages of growth. And I know there's all stages on our call today. As a president and CEO of the Women's Business Enterprise Council of Florida, Nancy manages a team of staff, sponsors, partners, and women business leaders who are dedicated to certifying, connecting, and championing women in business. Nancy has been recognized for her work on behalf of women in business through numerous prestigious awards, including, and naming a few, one of South Florida's 100 Most Accomplished Caribbean Americans by the International Career and Business Alliance, a World Women Leadership Achievement Award for the World Women Leadership Congress, an Associates Marketing Award for Women in E-Commerce, an Honorary Ambassador of Cascais, Portugal by the Ambassadors Club of the Industry Secretary of Cascais, and the oh gosh, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, but it's great. And Portugal's close to my heart because I'm Portuguese. But her clients have included UPS, the Urban League, AARP, New York Life, State Farm, and many more. Nancy is the author of The Decision of Scale, 25 Tips for Women-Owned Business Looking to Grow. Nancy's personal motto is connections, creativity, and courageous in all endeavors. Please help me welcoming Nancy Allen.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I appreciate that lovely introduction. And let's just go right into the presentation. So I'm going to stop my video, and then here we go. So I am one of the really lucky people. Go back up a slide, please. There you go. I'm one of the really lucky people that gets to live out my core values on practically a daily basis, right? So my core values are connection, creativity, and courage. And they inform how I manage through transitions. I really believe that we can create the life we want. I went through a major transition a year and a half ago. My husband of 34 years passed away from colon cancer. I went from married to the love of my life to widowed in less than a year. It was hard, it was scary, and I worked really hard to find a way through that transition. And now that I'm on the other side of it, I want to share with you what I did, because I think it can help you through whatever transition you find yourself in. So next slide, please. Perfect. So I am going to show you how to use the mnemonic CREATE to guide you through transitions. So I think there are 6 elements of an elegant transition, and I like to call it an elegant transition because the word elegant at its root is elegir, which means to choose. So I think, as I said, we get to choose the life we live. We get to choose the way we go through a transition. So there are 6 elements of an elegant transition. The first is to clarify. The second, to remember. The third deals with your energy. The fourth is accountability. The fifth is transcribing. And the sixth is actually embracing the transition. Next slide, please. So the first thing you have to do is to clarify what kind of transition you're in. And actually, as I was doing research while I was going through this transition myself, I learned that women go through about 50 different transitions in their lifetimes. And when I first heard that, I thought, how is that even possible? But when you think about it, there are really 3 types of transitions. There are seamless transitions. So we go from kindergarten to first grade. We go from elementary school to middle school to high school. Those are pretty seamless transitions. There are self-selected transitions where we go from girlfriend to lover to wife, where we go from wife to mother, and sometimes where we decide that we no longer want to be married, right? So those are self-selected transitions. We move from one job to another. We make that choice. Then there are the unexpected transitions. And those are the ones that knock us to our knees. In my case, I lost my husband. That was unexpected until he got the diagnosis of a stage 4 colon cancer. Your unexpected transition could be what just happened with us in this pandemic, right? I don't think anybody was really expecting that overnight we would be working the way that we're working. So once you clarify, you figure out what kind of a transition you're in. Is it a seamless transition, a self-selected transition, or an unexpected transition? The next step is to really accept the transition, because you can acknowledge up one way and down the other that you're in transition, but until you actually take the step towards accepting, okay, I'm in this transition, now what? You could just spiral and stay where you are. So let's look at the next slide. The next element is to remember your core values, right? So as I mentioned to you, my core values are connection, creativity, and courage. Yours might be family, travel, and fun. But whatever they are, you can always turn to your core values if you're struggling. So for example, I look for ways to connect and be creative when I'm faced with a challenge. It's important to remember your strengths as well, your strengths and your skills. And we all have strengths and skills, whether they be strengths and skills we use at home, at work, in our community. And one of the things to remember as well is, since you know now that you've been through many transitions in your lifetime, what worked for you in the past? What did you do to successfully get through a difficult transition in the past? I'm a big believer in, paper and pen and writing things down. So I suggest that you make a list of your strengths. That'll help you remember that you are able to manage through a transition. So let's look at the next slide, please. So energy. Energy is another way of saying attitude. And they're basically 7 levels of energy that we find ourselves in at any one point. So I've listed them here. There's apathy, anger, tolerance, compassion, peace, joy, and absolute passion. The really interesting thing about energy is that most of us live in tolerance, in that 3rd level of energy, which is tolerance. It's a pretty good level of energy to live in, right? Because things are good, you know, and sometimes we don't want to rock the boat. So when I work with women in transition and they tell me, yeah, I'm really in, you know, level 3 tolerance because I have a job and it's pretty good. Yeah, and I do want to advance, right? I do want to get promoted, but you know, it's going to take some doing on my part, and it's okay at tolerance, right? So as you're going through a transition, try to determine where your energy level is. And if your energy level is at tolerance, you're kind of like halfway there, right? Because try to figure out what it is that is going to push you over the edge so that you can no longer tolerate what it is you've been tolerating all this time. One of I put on this slide too, the Good Life Project podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts. And the link on this underneath the Good Life Project podcast is a 2-hour podcast that the host did with a woman who talks about positive psychology. And it's got tons and tons of tips on dealing with stress and anxiety. And she broke out the tips by what you can do to use your body and your mind to inform how you handle anxiety. So I really suggest if you're looking for something interesting with some great tips on dealing with anxiety, this is a really good podcast to listen to. So energy or attitude is the 3rd element of an elegant transition. All right, next please. Anchors, accountability. I'm sorry, the 4th element is accountability. And I have a great exercise called Anchors and Engines. And if you'll indulge me for a minute, I'll take you through it. And what you need to do is get out a piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you to draw a line down the center of your piece of paper. On one side of the page, you're going to write the word anchor, and on the other side of the page, you're going to write the word engine. And accountability also is another way of saying support. So if you move on to the next slide, please, I have an example. And if I say the word anchors, you know, when I'm doing this face-to-face, right? When we do this exercise face-to-face, I'll ask the participants, what does the word anchor bring up when I say that word? And generally I get these 3 things. It's all about stability, it's about grounding, and anchors keep you in place. Then I turn to the word engine, and I say, what does the word engine bring up when you hear it? And generally I get these 3 answers. Engines are all about movement, it's about moving forward, and it's about action. So as you're thinking of the words anchors and engines, I want you to also think about 5 people in your life. And if you move on to the next slide, please, I think that's where I have the example. Yeah. If you move, if you think about 5 people in your life that you always count on, who are, you know, your core of the core of your support group, where would you put them? Would they be an anchor or would they be an engine? And so I'll share a personal example with you. My mom is in my anchors category. My mom is my rock. She's 83 years old, and she is the woman I want to be when I grow up. She's patient, she's very kind, And I know that at any point, if I need support, I can go to my mom, right? She's an anchor. She grounds me. She represents stability in my life. On the other hand, on the other side, I have engines. My two friends, Blanca and Steph, are my engines. And the difference here is where my mom grounds me and keeps me in place, so to speak, my engines are always there to help me grow. And here's a prime example of that. As a hobby, I make jewelry. And my mom knows that I make jewelry, and my friend Blanca knows that I make jewelry. And if I were to say to my mom, I'm going to stop working with the council, and I'm going to concentrate my efforts on making my jewelry, because I think that's really where my passion lies. My mom would say, oh, no, why? You have a good job. You have health insurance. You've been doing your job very successfully for the last 20 years. Why, just keep your jewelry as your hobby, because, I think it's more important that you have a job. So she's holding me in place, right? Now, if I were to call my friend Blanca and say, Blanquita, I think, I'm 61. I've been doing the council for, the past 20 years. I think I'm ready to make the move to doing my jewelry. Blanca's reaction would be, you know what? It's about time. I have been telling you for years, you're an incredible jewelry designer. You will make it big, Nancy. You just need to take some time and develop and market your jewelry. What do you want to do first? And I've actually had that conversation with Blanca, right? That's how she moves me forward, right? She acknowledges what I've been talking to her about, and she says, okay, it's about time. You've been talking about this. You know what you want to do. What's the first step? What are you going to do next? So do you see the difference between your anchors and your engines, right? Your anchors are important in your life because they give you grounding and stability. Your engines are important in your life as you're working through transitions, because your engines are going to keep you moving forward. Now, I often get the question, well, I don't have any anchors, or I don't have any engines. In that instance, I invite you to kind of broaden your circle and find those people who can be an anchor or an engine. And there are times when you have somebody who's in both categories. My husband, I believe, was in both categories. For some things, he was my anchor. For some things, he was my engine. So I hope this exercise helps you to look at accountability and finding support through your transition. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. The sixth or the fifth element of an elegant transition is transcribing, putting words onto a page, right? And psychologically, when you journal, when you put pen to paper, it works also, I think, if you type, but it's the connection is much more direct if you use your small motor skills in your hand and transcribe, write down actually in a journal on a piece of paper what you're feeling, what you're going through. That actually helps you to take control. We very often, as we're going through a difficult time in our lives, we kind of rehash the same thing over and over again. And our brains are designed to keep us safe. So sometimes our brains don't allow us to look past what we've already experienced, to look past how we've already done something. And so the whole exercise of writing down what you're thinking kind of releases that connection and allows for additional thoughts to come in, right? What we transcribe, we actually control. And there's some really neat exercises about, you know, drawing a gremlin and what does the gremlin say to you, put that out, you know, somewhere visible so that you can see it, and actually naming that gremlin, that voice that keeps saying, no, you can't, naming that voice, and there you can then identify it when it comes up, right? So if you've named your gremlin Mr. Doubtful, and as you're going through a transition or a challenge, you hear, well, you know, you tried that in the past and it didn't work, or why do you think you can do this? Then you can say, okay, Mr. Doubtful, I hear you, and thank you for your advice, but I'm moving forward. I'm moving forward because I've got the skills and the accountability partners and the support to help me move forward. So it's really, really important that you transcribe and journal. There are people who journal on a daily basis. I'm one of those people, by the way. I've got tons and tons of journals, some of which I've gotten rid of, some I want to keep. And you know, if you're in a place where you're afraid to journal because you think somebody might read what you're writing and you don't want to expose yourself that way, there's a technique called scribe and shred. So you just write what you need to write, and then tear the page out of your journal, or just tear the page up and throw it away. Then the exercise is still as effective of you writing down your fears, writing down what you're going through. It takes it out of your mind and gives you an ability to control it, because now it's on paper and you can do with that paper what you would like. So transcribing is the fifth element of an elegant transition. All right. Finally, embrace. So once you go through these different elements of a transition, I invite you to really embrace the space between no longer this and not yet that. And that space can be a month long. It can be a couple of years long. It's up to you, right? So when I went from wife to widow, for me, it was almost a 2-year transition, right? Because my husband was diagnosed. He lived for 9 months after his diagnosis, and now I'm on the other side of that transition. But I didn't get to the other side very quickly, right? And I used these different elements to inform how I could get to that other side. So it's really personal, how long it takes you to get from what was to what is going to be, right? And how you manage through that transition is going to inform how successful you are in that transition. And the really interesting, and I think the blessing in all of this, is that you can transition while you're transitioning in your personal life, you can also be transitioning in your professional life. And in a minute, I'm going to take you through how that can happen. But I love this photo here on the side, and the statement, I trust the next chapter because I know the author. And I really believe that. As I said in the beginning, I believe that we can control how and why we live the way that we do. Okay, so let's see the next slide. Right, so again, the mnemonic is create. So I kind of did this presentation on a personal transition, but let's look at how this would work in your business currently, right? So the first thing is to clarify. So where is your business today? And what is it that you do today that could inform how we're going to be managing the new normal, right? We've all heard that buzzword, the new normal. What's going to happen when people go back to work? So clarifying and accepting, okay, so I'm in this position now, my business has suffered. What can I do to move my business forward? That's clarifying and accepting. Remembering the second element has to do with, again, your strengths and your skills, right? Your core values and your strengths and your skills. What has been successful? What have you successfully done in the past to grow your business? What have you successfully done in the past to pivot your business? And if, you know, you're new to business and this is the very first time you're faced with something like that, make a list of your strengths. What is it about you and your business that you can learn from, maybe tweak a little bit, and use that to really pivot your business. The third element of energy or attitude, also really important in this time with your business, right? So you as the boss, the attitude or the energy you bring to your day-to-day dealings with your team, dealings with your actual clients, your potential clients, all that is going to be affected by how you present yourself. Accountability, here in this sense, you know, looking at your anchors and engines, right? Who on your team serves as anchors? Who on your team are your engines? And as I said, you know, it's nice to have a balance, right? If you have more anchors, who can you network with? Who can you reach out to for support? If you have more engines, again, you know, an engine can kind of propel you out of control, right? Sometimes the engines in your life are so gung-ho about moving forward that they take you perhaps down a path a little more quickly than you're able to accommodate, or that you're willing to accommodate. So that's why it's really important to have that balance of anchors and engines. As far as transcribing within the business context, it now is a great time to plan, right? What is, if you didn't do a strategic plan, do a strategic plan now. If you had a strategic plan that you know, executed starting in January of this year, now is a really good time to go back and look at that document and say, okay, the reality is we might not meet our financial goals this year, or the reality is we might not meet our target clients this year. So now would be a really good time to look at your plans. And then finally, the embrace portion. It is what it is, right? We are all going through this transition, and we can be upset about it. We can just be in the why me phase of a transition, and all of us go through that, right? Why did this happen to me? Why this? Why that? Move from the why stage to the how stage, right? So yes, this happened, and I'm now in a position I've acknowledged it, it happened, and now I want to see how I can come out on the other side. So that's what I mean by the embracing the space, right? So you're in a transition, look at how you can move from what was to what will be, because that space is where we can create a new reality. All right, so the next slide, I believe, is time for questions and answers. I didn't want to take too much time through the presentation, because I did want to leave time for questions and answers. Okay, so I'll start my video. Oops, okay, so if you go ahead, if there are any questions, please let me know, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, well, I'm not hearing anything, so let me look at the chat. Oh, I see everybody's been writing down their core values. That's wonderful. Yeah, and remember that your core values can really affect how you go through a transition, right? When we're in transition and moving through and struggling, go back and look at your core values. And generally what you're struggling with is it has to do directly with something rubbing up against one of your core values.
Nancy?
Yes?
We have a question. The first question is, what kind of activities do you recommend in order to identify your core values?
Oh, well, I've got a really great core values sheet that has on it 52 different kinds of core values. And I'm happy to share that with all of you. And what the exercise asks you to do is to look through the 52 core values, select 20. Then from the 20, select 10. Then from the 10, select 5. And it actually has 2 columns as well. One is a value rating, and then the other is an action rating. So let's say that, you know, one of my core values, right, is connections. So for my value rating, that's a 10. My action, I'm really work at that. So my action would be a 9, 9.5, almost 10. So I'm happy to share that that with you. I'll send it to Andrea, and she can send it out when she sends out the slide presentation.
To everyone who's attending today, if you have questions or comments that you want to share, please use the chat box, or you can type them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen.
So I see that someone said that she really liked the anchors and engines analogy. And I learned that from my business coach, Michelle Villalobos. And it was one of the very first things she asked us to do when we joined her, her coaching program. And it just took my breath away. I was so amazed at the simplicity of it, right? Once you identify who the people that you surround yourself with, we tend to take for granted. Like on my example, I had Miriam, I had my mom and my friend Miriam as my anchors. Well, Miriam's been my best friend since I was 10 years old. And Miriam, as much as I love Miriam and she loves me, she knows one aspect of my life, basically, right? She sees me through the relationship that we've had all of these years. Steph is an engine. I've known Steph for probably the past 15 years or so, on and off, but she knows me in another way, right? So when I want to talk business, when I want to talk professional development, I don't go to Miriam because she doesn't really know me in that sense, but Steph and Blanca do. So that's why it's really important to have to know where, in which category your support group, in which category they fall.
Hey, I'm seeing a question, Nancy, from Cindy Walker. She's asking, what are your suggestions and techniques for journaling?
Oh, great question. So there are many different techniques, right? But the simplest is find a nice pen that you like and find some kind of a journal or pieces of paper. And then set a time in which you're going to journal. Start with 5 minutes, because a lot of people think that I can't, I don't know what I'm going to say for 5 minutes, or I don't even know where to start. Or if you're like me, years ago, I was afraid to journal because what if I made a mistake, right? Or what if I just scratch a word out and it wasn't going to look pretty and perfect? So I found this technique called smash journaling. And what the proponent of smash journaling, what she advises is you get your journal and you open the pages and you scrunch up the pages, right? And so now it's no longer perfect. Smooth out the pages and start journaling. And always do so with the knowledge that if you want to put something on the paper that you don't want anybody to read, then you can always tear that out. or paint over it, because I do a lot of journaling that has with watercolors as well. So you can be as creative as you want for journaling. Some people use journaling just as a brain dump. They get up in the morning, they have their cup of coffee, and they pull out their journal and then just write. Whatever comes to mind, they just write. It's a brain dump. You can do that at the end of the day if you're the type of person who has a hard time falling asleep because you're thinking of all of the stuff that you got to get done, that you didn't get done. So you do your journaling at the end of the day. It's just a brain dump. Remove all of those things from your head, and then it allows for space for creative thinking. And that's what's going to move you forward, is creative thinking.
Love that, Nancy. I have a couple more questions from Mary or Marie. I would share this information with several friends who are going through major life changes. Do you have a podcast or other ways I could share this information with others? And then she also said that you seem to have a wealth of knowledge. And do you have a website, book, or other resources? Thanks so much for sharing today, she said.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. And to your answer, yes, 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 and yes. So the final slide has my contact information, and I do a mastermind on transitions. And the mastermind works, if you're not familiar with what a mastermind group is, it's a group of 10 to 15 people who come together and who are supportive of the other members of the group, right? So every session, we usually do weekly group meetings. At every session, somebody is given a little bit more time to talk about a challenge or an issue they have. They present it, and then we go around and everybody offers some insight, some advice. So the concept is a very old concept of masterminding, is that, you know, one mind is great, but when you have many minds addressing an issue, it's even better. So I do have a mastermind group that includes the weekly masterminds and then one personal call with me on a monthly basis. And we do 6-month contracts with that. And then I do one-on-one coaching. And the best way to get to know which is best for you, or if there are other products or programs that we have, is to just hop on a discovery call with me. And I love doing the discovery calls because I get to know you, you get to know me, and then we can decide if we're right for each other. So I'm really happy to just jump on discovery calls with anyone who is interested.
And I imagine that I love that mastermind, and I imagine with our new normal, that's probably going to grow a lot for you, Nancy. So that information is great. So her information, she just put the slide. So reach out to her for that information. And then we have another question from one of my favorites, from Pat with Papalock, and she is saying, any advice to those of us with core values of independence and self-sufficiency? It's not easy for some of us to solicit, accept anchors and engines.
Yes. So I was probably in that same boat, right? Independent and self-sufficient. And that's a really great place to be. But as I'm assuming the question is going, it's kind of a lonely place to be too, right? And one of the things that helped me through that is the whole art of delegating, right? And the whole art of being vulnerable. Brené Brown is an incredible author and speaker, and she's a lot of insights on, the being vulnerable as a strength, right? So when I expose my fears and my challenges to you, I'm being vulnerable. And that allows you to expose your fears and your challenges to me. And together we can come through whatever it is that we're both being challenged with, right? So I do think that If you dig deep, you could probably find some people who have been anchors in your life, right? And maybe start there. Look at the anchors. Who, as you know, you were growing up, did you count on your grandparents? Did you count on a favorite auntie? Why, you know, what characteristics did those people have that allowed you to learn from them? And then start transferring those characteristics to people in your surroundings. And it's always really good to go kind of beyond your immediate surroundings, right? So groups like BNI, groups like NABO, like, you know, the WEBEC, Florida, the council, we're all about helping you and supporting you while you can still maintain your independence, right? But you can take from what we have and grow your business or grow professionally or personally.
Awesome. Awesome. Beth Fine had a great statement, but I think it would be something, I guess it's a question as well. I'd love for you to talk about a little bit. It says, I think my biggest concern, strategic direction, is announcing and managing the change.
I'm sorry, is announcing and managing the change?
Yes.
Yeah. So you know, go back to creating your strengths and skills list, right? So in business development, we talk about a SWOT analysis, your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, right? But that translates really well personally as well. As we're faced with this pandemic, a lot is changing, right? A lot is uncertain. And business owners, we like to live in a certain amount of certainty because we know that we've got employees to pay, we've got team members to pay, we've got contracts to fulfill. So we need that stability. So the good news is everybody's in the same crisis now. I saw something that says we can't say we're in the same boat because, you know, people have different size boats, right? But we're in the same storm right now. And those of us that are going to really come out of this on top of it are the ones who are currently assessing who they are, what they can do, and looking 6 months down the road. What is it going to be like? What is what is your business going to look like 6 months from now? And I'm going to share with you all a really incredible resource. There's a book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. And if you haven't read The Infinite Game or listened to it, Simon Sinek actually reads the book in the audio version. Do yourself a favor and read that book. And there's so many great tidbits of information. What he does is he looks at businesses and how they are successful based on whether or not they're playing a finite game, which is like a football game. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And at the end of the time frame, everybody agrees whoever has the most points wins, right? That's a finite game. An infinite game is a longer term game. There isn't necessarily a winner and a loser. There isn't a time frame. And he analyzes businesses based on whether or not they had a finite mindset, like Kodak. Okay, so we all know the Kodak company is what happened to them, right? They had a very finite mindset. A company like Apple or Google, they have a more infinite mindset because they're always trying to see what's the next big thing. There is a quote in that book attributed to a woman, I believe, Lori Richardson, who was the highest ranking female naval officer in the history of our country. And when she was asked what was the secret of her success as a leader, she said, leaders are visionaries. My job as a leader is to look up and out. I hire people to look down and in my business, my organization. So if as leaders, we take this time now to look up and out, right? We have people on our teams who are managing through what they need to manage through. And those of us that are going to come out best on top are the ones who are now taking this time to really look beyond the immediate and out, broaden your horizon and see, what can I do 6 months from now? What skills can I use, skills that I currently have, and how can I pivot to what's going to be happening in our country, in the world, in the next 6 months and beyond.
Awesome. Nancy spoke of an author and a book, and I'm gonna make sure that we get you guys that information. And then also, Stephanie just shared Nancy's book and how you can get that. But Nancy, we got another question or a comment, I guess. Lori Jean, she disappeared but came back, and she's asking if the presentation will be available. And yes, we will be emailing this information out, the slides. You can listen to the recorded webinar as well. So that will be available to everybody. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm loving all this information, especially the anchors and engines. I'm over here planning a after hours event. I think it would be great for us to have an event where we all invite our anchors and engines to come together as well, because I think bringing them would be such a great thing for us all to do, those people that are so instrumental in our lives. But anybody else have any questions for Nancy? It's been great information. I've been reading all the chats that have going back and forth, and it sounds like everybody's been really appreciative of all this information. Everybody's thanking you and saying thank you. I hope you can see that, Nancy.
Yes, I can see the chats. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I hope that those of you who'd like to explore some of these ideas further, I hope you call me. Set up a discovery call. Those are complimentary, and then we can talk. The discovery calls are about 45 minutes long. Okay, so through that process, you'll gain some clarity, and we can decide if we can move forward together, or if I can recommend some books, some resources for you. And that's really, what I like to do, right? Is meet new people and help kind of identify some resources to manage through transitions. As I said, I went through a major transition, and I'm happy to say I was able to do so. It wasn't all, light and roses, but it was mostly, and I was a very, very creative during the process of that transition. So I hope these tips have helped you.
I think that's awesome. And we love the truth, because we all don't have a bed of roses all the time. So that's one of the reasons we really wanted to create this is to have that collaboration where we can be honest and talk about what's really going on. But thank you, Nancy. Want to tell you thank you so much, and thank everyone for joining today. We hope that we will be able to be back in June, but we don't know. So just like how we said, no longer this and maybe not that. So we will be reaching out to everyone. Please like our Facebook page. If you go to the Chamber website or the Chamber Facebook page and go to groups, each council has their own page. We've been really communicating through that. The Chamber's done an amazing job at getting information and resources to their members. So be checking your emails for communication about when will we be meeting. We do have our speaker for next month, Malia, and she is with Pie in the Sky. And she has agreed to do a webinar as we just did today, or she will be available to be in person on our meeting. So we will keep you updated on that. Again, look for this email today and we'll get you all the information from today's webinar. And just once again, please stay healthy and safe and sane. Thank you so much for being here and can't wait to be with y'all in person soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.